Radio 9 News, a presentation of the Muncie Broadcasting Corporation. Muncie and Delaware County Police busted another one early this morning. 25-year-old Bobby Gibson and his 27-year-old wife Janet of Rural Route 1, Selma, were busted for possession of over 2 pounds of cut marijuana in a raid on their Selma home last night. Local authorities tell us the raid climaxed a 6-month investigation of the Gibsons. Along with the grass, police confiscated 60 grams of marijuana seeds and $1,400 in cash. Well-informed sources say a ceasefire will go into effect in Laos at noon Thursday. These sources say the agreement has already been initialed by the warring factions. Meanwhile, Pentagon sources say several thousand troops and more than 200 tanks have been spotted on the Ho Chi Minh Trail towards Saigon.
The Pentagon confirms that despite the Vietnam ceasefire, the communists are moving large numbers of tanks and troops down the Ho Chi Minh supply trail in Laos. Defense Department spokesman Jerry Freedom refused to go into detail beyond stating a belief that the men and materiel were for use in southern Laos and were not being infiltrated into Vietnam. But intelligence sources are puzzled by the movement and speculate the ultimate destination may be the Saigon area. The Paris Peace Agreement stipulate the one-for-one replacement of obsolete or damaged equipment, but only through designated points of entry into the south. Military officials suggest that the communists are moving to stockpile the weapons before the control machinery is in place. Roger Gittins at the Pentagon.
Gary Demaree, one of the men at work.
This is Jay Silverhue. I want to talk to you about almost $1 billion. The money which Congress has awarded to Alaskan natives under the Alaska Land Claim Settlement Act. This money goes not only to the native people who now live in Alaska, but to anyone, anywhere, who is at least 1/4 Alaskan Indian, Aleut, or Eskimo. The federal government is now attempting to locate the many eligible Alaskan natives who are not living in Alaska. Many have never lived in Alaska. Some may never have seen it. There are many adopted children. This does not affect eligibility. If you have at least 1/4 Alaskan native blood, regardless of where you are now living, you have a share in the $1 billion. To find out if you qualify, write to the Alaska Native Enrollment Office in Anchorage, Alaska. If you or anyone you know is at least 1/4 Alaskan Indian, Aleut, or Eskimo, write Alaska Native Enrollment Office, Pouch 7-1971, Anchorage, Alaska, 99501.
Radio 9 News Time, 3:12. It's basketball sectional time again, and 2/3 of Indiana's high school basketball sectional tourneys have favorites. Some just barely, but virtually anything appears possible at the other first-round sites this week. That leaves plenty of room for upsets, although in general, the month-long Hoosier hysteria has become a showcase for the larger city teams. The UPI form chart lists 18 sectional defending champs as underdogs, including Madison Heights at neighboring Anderson, a state tourney finalist last year. Last year, 30 of 64 first-round winners repeated. Among the sectional winners were 10 brand new ones that includes Yorktown, which provided the biggest first-round upset by winning from 5-time state champ Muncie Central 70-65. Bruce Parkinson, who led Yorktown to victory that year, now is a freshman starter for Purdue coach Fred Schaus. Indiana Attorney General Ted Sendak today announced the third and final settlement for public schools and libraries who had overpaid certain book companies. A total of $72,515 was recovered in this settlement from a suit won in U.S. District Court. Under the recovery settlement, Delaware County schools will receive refunds of $105. Muncie schools will receive $2,365. Under the library distribution, the Muncie Public Library will receive $1,105 in overpayment to certain book manufacturing companies. Since the Vietnam Peace Accord and Henry Kissinger's whirlwind tour through Asia, communist Russia is running scared with regard to future Washington-Peking collusion.
According to communist diplomats here, the Kremlin thinks the friendliness of meetings between Henry Kissinger and Chinese leaders Chairman Mao and Premier Zhou Enlai has gone too far. And signs of friendly relations between China and Japan has given Moscow fears it might even mean a triple alignment at Russia's expense. Those in the know here think Russia's fears might increase the prospects of an early summit meeting between President Nixon and Soviet Party leader Leonid Brezhnev. Earlier, the U.S. had been seen by Moscow to be aiming at peace in Asia based on a balance with China and Russia.
But the Kremlin now appears to fear that balance is shifting more and more in favor of China. Pat Thurgood, London.
Chrysler Corporation is recalling 150,000 1972 and 73 models to replace leaking fuel pumps. The automaker says the faulty pump has caused at least 57 engine fires. The models involved include the Plymouth Valiants, Satellites, and Furies, Dodge Darts, Coronets, Chargers, and Polaris built late in the 1972 model year and 1973 models made through December. Sectarian violence isn't the only thing happening in Ireland today. Police are trying to find those responsible for a $145,000 train robbery today.
The raiders were in two groups. Shortly before the train arrived at Dundalk, 4 armed men walked into the station master's office. When the train arrived at the station, the second group, 2 men and a woman who traveled on the train from Belfast, jumped from one of the coaches and tried to force the customs officer into the mail van. The customs officer managed to break away, but the raiders grabbed 8 mail bags and threw them onto the platform. They made off in 2 cars which were parked behind the station. Roadblocks have been set up in a number of border areas. Norman Reese, Belfast.
Senator Edward Kennedy, speaking before a subcommittee hearing on shield legislation for newsmen, called for absolute freedom for newsmen. But correspondent Pi Chamberlain says little, if any, chance is given for an absolute press shield law.
Liberals quarreled over how best to protect freedom of the press. Senator Edward Kennedy, at a hearing on the issue, said newsmen should have an absolute right to keep their sources secret. Walter Mondale of Minnesota, however, wanted a qualified right, where sources would have to be revealed in some national security cases or where there is a threat to life. Committee Chairman Sam Ervin of North Carolina, whose support would be indispensable to a source-protecting bill, pulled the rug out from under the fans of an absolute approach. Ervin came out for a qualified approach. Also at the hearing, conservative Republican Gurney of Florida suggested a federal Truth in News Commission that could force news organizations to tell the truth. Pi Chamberlain, Capitol Hill.
Muncie police have 2 more ranks to fill. Patrolman Dick Cunnington and Donald Vaught are retiring today after over 20 years of police service. The 2 men were recognized in ceremonies this morning in the office of Chief Cordell Campbell. WERK, first in the Midwest with Radio 9 News.
Fuel and power to heat and light American homes and businesses are being rapidly consumed and supplies are low. There are ways you can help conserve these vital resources. Lower your thermostat setting 2 or 3 degrees. Improve insulation in attics and around doors and windows. Shut off heat in unused areas. And reduce consumption of electricity during peak hours. Remember, when you conserve fuel and energy, you help yourself and your community. This message presented by the President's Office of Emergency Preparedness and the Office of Consumer Affairs.
Workland weather, then the Commodore remembers the Guess Who from 1971. Look for cloudy skies tonight, low 22. Chance of more snow tomorrow, high near 37. Currently at work, 36 degrees. This news a presentation of the Muncie Broadcasting Corporation. Working for you, Gary Demaree, Radio 9 News. WERK.